US-Saudi petrodollar deal ends. The end of the petrodollar era. Right now, global superpowers are quietly walking away from the US dollar, abandoning a 50-year-old financial deal that has directly funded the American way of life. Why does a hidden agreement signed in the 1970s dictate the exact price of your rent, your groceries, and your financial security today? Because the invisible pillar holding up the global economy is beginning to crack. Look, here's the thing. Most people think the United States is the wealthiest nation on earth because it produces the best technology, houses the biggest banks, or owns the most powerful military. But that is a carefully engineered illusion. What's actually happening is much more calculated. America's true superpower isn't what it sells to the world, it's what it forces the world to buy oil with. For 5 decades, a global rule went completely unquestioned. If a country wanted to buy a barrel of oil from anywhere in the Middle East, they had to pay for it using US dollars. This is the petrodollar system, and it gave Washington an absolute financial monopoly over the planet.
But right now, a quiet rebellion is taking place behind closed doors. Superpowers are rewriting the rules of commerce, and the US is rapidly losing its grip on the ultimate economic cheat code. There is a single, classified date from the mid-1970s, a secret meeting that birthed this entire system, and the expiration of that exact arrangement is threatening to trigger a massive, slow-motion collapse of the American lifestyle. We will open the loop on that secret deal in a moment. To understand the core reveal, you have to look at how this hidden architecture actually functions. In 1974, the US was facing an economic nightmare, with inflation skyrocketing and the dollar losing its footing. So Washington sent its top officials to Saudi Arabia with a wild proposition. The deal was brilliantly simple. The United States would give the Saudi kingdom total military protection and high-tech weapons. In exchange, Saudi Arabia agreed to do one thing: price all of their oil exclusively in US dollars. Think about the genius of this math. Because every country on Earth needs oil to run their factories, power their grids, and fuel their cars, every country suddenly had to build massive piles of US dollars in their central banks. Let's look at real numbers to see how this hidden loop directly funds your world. Imagine Germany wants to buy $10 billion worth of oil from the Middle East. They cannot use German currency. They must first give their goods and services to America to acquire 10 billion US dollars.
Then, Germany hands those dollars to the oil producers. But what do the oil producers do with billions of paper dollars sitting in their vaults? They can't eat them. So they loop that money directly back to New York, buying US government debt, known as treasuries. This is the petrodollar recycling machine. It allowed the United States government to borrow trillions of dollars at artificially low interest rates, funding massive social programs, military budgets, and cheap credit for ordinary American consumers. The rest of the world did the work, and America printed the paper. But wait, this is where it gets dangerous. What happens to this entire machine when the world's biggest oil sellers decide they don't want America's paper anymore? This changes everything about how the world works today. If countries stop needing dollars to buy oil, they will stop holding dollars in their central banks. Those trillions of unneeded greenbacks won't just vanish. They will come flooding back home to the United States, competing for domestic goods and triggering an inflationary wave that makes recent price hikes look like pocket change. The psychology layer of this geopolitical shift is what most people don't realize. For 50 years, global trust was anchored in the idea that the US dollar was as safe as gold. But recently, Washington made a massive psychological miscalculation. When the US froze $300 billion of Russia's foreign reserves during the Ukraine conflict, every country on Earth, including China, India, and Saudi Arabia, had an immediate, terrifying realization. If the United States can delete your money with the stroke of a pen, then holding US dollars is the ultimate counterparty risk.
Think of it like a visual analogy. Imagine a giant casino where the owner forces everyone to buy his custom plastic chips just to purchase food at the buffet. For decades, players happily hoard the chips because they love the buffet. But suddenly, the owner locks a player out and cancels his chips. Instantly, every other player in the casino looks at the plastic tokens in their hands and realizes they don't actually own anything. They are completely at the mercy of the house. So they quietly start trading their chips for real gold, real estate, and independent currencies before the house can target them next. The escalation of stakes is happening right now at light speed. Saudi Arabia, the very anchor of the petrodollar system, has officially joined the BRICS alliance. They are now actively accepting Chinese yuan, European euros, and local digital currencies for their oil exports. China and Saudi Arabia recently completed a massive oil transaction without using a single US dollar, completely bypassing the Western financial plumbing system. Every time a transaction like this happens, the global demand for the dollar takes a direct structural hit. This leads us directly into our second open loop, the sovereign debt trap. The United States national debt is currently compounding at an unsustainable rate, exploding past $34 trillion. For 50 years, America could ignore its debt because foreign central banks were mathematically forced to buy US bonds to recycle their petrodollars. But if those nations are no longer recycling oil wealth into American debt, who is going to fund the multi-trillion-dollar deficits?
Zooming out to the macro perspective, we are watching the transition from a unipolar world, where one superpower sets all the economic rules, to a multipolar world. This isn't just about currencies, it's about a massive diversification of global power. Nations are realizing that true economic sovereignty doesn't come from holding paper promises issued by a foreign government. It comes from owning physical assets, raw commodities, and independent trade routes. The petrodollar era was an anomaly in human history, and the historical baseline is aggressively asserting itself. The climax insight is deeply unsettling. The US dollar didn't become the global reserve currency because of economic perfection. It became the reserve currency because it was tethered to the lifeblood of human industry. The moment you untether oil from the dollar, you expose the raw, unfiltered reality of America's balance sheet. Let's look at a highly possible scenario of how this plays out in the near future. It won't happen overnight like a sudden stock market crash. It will happen as a steady, relentless erosion of your purchasing power. First, as global de-dollarization accelerates, foreign nations sell off their massive holdings of US government bonds. To attract new buyers, the US government is forced to dramatically raise interest rates, making car loans, mortgages, and credit card debt incredibly expensive for ordinary citizens. Second, the cost of importing goods spikes sharply because the dollar loses its global premium. Electronics, clothing, fuel, and food become permanently more expensive, permanently shrinking the middle class's standard of living into a daily struggle for basic stability.
Smart and informed people are already changing their position. They are shifting away from holding purely paper liabilities and moving toward hard, unprintable assets. They are diversifying into international equities, physical commodities, and scarce resources that no single government can devalue through a printing press. The final reframe is this: stop looking at global news headlines as distant political drama and start seeing them as direct updates to your personal net worth. The soaring prices you see at the store aren't just corporate greed. They are the early, quiet ripples of a changing global monetary order. The system has spent decades counting on you ignoring the hidden math of geopolitics. It needs you to believe that your money is safe just because it's sitting as digital numbers on a Western screen. But the final unsettling realization is that money is ultimately nothing more than a system of shared belief. And when the largest oil producers, manufacturing hubs, and central banks on the planet stop believing in the promise, the paper bridge begins to burn. If you want to understand how money really works and see the tectonic shifts before the ground breaks beneath your feet, subscribe.